You slept 7, 8, maybe 9 hours last night, and by 10 this morning, you needed a coffee just to keep your eyes open. You push through because you have to, but underneath there's this question that won't go away. Why am I still this tired? Most men write it off as age, and most doctors agree. They call it normal. Hand you a pamphlet and move on. But here's what nobody stops to ask. Is this the ordinary kind of tired or the other kind? Because there are two, and they are not the same thing, and they do not get fixed the same way. I'm Dr. Hartman, a board-certified urologist, and in over 20 years of practice, I've seen men in their 60s and 70s who were sharp, energized, running circles around men half their age. And the difference was never genetics or luck. Today, I'm going to give you one simple way to tell which kind of tired you're actually dealing with, and why it matters more than most men realize. Do me one quick thing first. Hit subscribe. I put one of these out every week, and you'll want the next one. Let's get into it. I had a man come into my office a while back, retired, plenty of free time, and all he did most days was sit and watch television because he simply didn't have the energy for much else. He assumed that was just what 65 looked like. It wasn't. Once we changed what he was actually feeding his body, that same man was back to gardening, traveling with his wife, keeping up with his grandkids without needing a nap halfway through the day. That kind of turnaround doesn't happen if the tiredness really was just age catching up with him. I want to be upfront with you. This isn't going to undo 30 years of habits overnight, and if anyone tells you it will, they're selling you something. What it will do for a lot of men is finally tell you which kind of tired you're dealing with. And that answer alone changes everything about what to do next. This is for the men who sleep 8 hours and wake up feeling like they slept 2. The men who used to power through a full day and now need to sit down by 2 p.m. just to keep going. If that's you, keep watching. I want to be clear about something before we go further. There's nothing wrong with slowing down a little as you get older. That's normal and healthy. What we're talking about here is different. It's the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that no amount of sleep seems to touch. The kind that makes a man feel like a shell of who he used to be. That's not a normal part of aging, and it deserves a real answer, not a shrug. Why just age doesn't actually explain it. Here's the thing people get wrong. Age on its own doesn't create a wall of exhaustion. What actually happens as men get older is their glands, especially the adrenals and the gonads, get run down from decades of stress, bad fuel, and toxins. The body never gets a real break to clear out. Your body treats those hormone glands as emergency-only systems. They're built to kick in when you truly need them, not to run on empty around the clock. When a man spends 30 years demanding energy from glands that were only ever designed for occasional emergencies, eventually those glands start falling behind. That's not aging, that's burnout at the hormonal level. And it happens to some 40-year-olds and skips some 70-year-olds entirely, which tells you it was never really about the calendar. Think about it this way. Your adrenaline and your testosterone are both meant to show up when something demands it of you. A real physical threat, a real physical effort. They were never meant to be the thing propping you up through an ordinary Tuesday. For decades on end, when that's what you've been asking of them, they eventually run dry. And the fatigue that follows can hit a fit-looking 45-year-old just as hard as it hits a 75-year-old, because it was never tied to age in the first place. The simple way to tell the difference. Here's the test. For 5 days straight, eat like this. It is not optional. Real animal fat with every meal. A couple of soft cooked egg yolks, still runny in the center. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive. Just feed your body the raw building blocks it actually needs to make hormones, instead of processed fuel that gives it nothing to work with. If you want to go further and eat them raw, some men do, that's your call. But soft is more than enough to run this test. If your tiredness is just normal wear and tear, plain sleep debt, or overwork, this will barely move the needle. You'll feel maybe slightly better, nothing dramatic. But if what's dragging you down is hormonal, glandular exhaustion, you'll usually notice a real shift by day 3 or 4. Mornings feel different. The 2 p.m. wall doesn't hit as hard. Some men tell me it's the first time in years they've felt like themselves again. By day 5, that shift, fast and noticeable, is your answer. Real aging fatigue doesn't respot your body's endocrine system. All those hormone-producing glands only pulls extra hormone production when it's dealing with an emergency, or when it has abundant, easy access to the raw materials to do it cheaply. Cholesterol and real animal fat are two of the most direct building blocks your body uses to manufacture testosterone in the first place. Cut those out of your diet. For years, the way most low-fat advice tells men to, and you've essentially told your own glands to go on strike. There's also solid research now tying long-term vitamin D deficiency and poor sleep quality to measurably lower testosterone, which only piles on top of a body that's already starving for the raw materials it needs. Add in constant stress with no real recovery, and cortisol starts stealing the same raw materials your body would otherwise use to build testosterone. Your body picks survival hormones over vitality hormones every single time, because that's what it's built to do. In an emergency, the problem is, modern life has convinced a lot of men's bodies that they're in a permanent emergency all day, every day, for decades. Layer years of pasteurized, processed food on top of that. Food that's been cooked and stripped of the enzymes and nutrients your glands would otherwise use easily, and you can start to see why so many men in their 50s and 60s feel like they're running on empty. Even though nothing medically shows up wrong on their blood work, the standard tests often miss this entirely because they're looking for disease, not for a body that's simply been starved of the raw material it needs for years on end. None of that happens overnight, and none of it reverses overnight either, which is exactly why the 5-day fuel test matters so much. It gives you a fast, honest readout without waiting months to find out whether you're dealing with simple tiredness or a gland that's been quietly starving for years. What to actually do with this? If you ran the 5-day test and felt that shift, don't stop there. Keep the real fats coming. Animal fat, egg yolks, a little raw butter. Add oysters into the mix a couple times a week. They're one of the most direct sources of zinc your body can get. And zinc is essential for testosterone production. Watermelon rind, the white part just beneath the green skin, is another old trick worth adding in. A lot of men notice it helps with blood flow and general vitality after a few days of eating it consistently. And find some way to actually let your stress drain out. Even 20 minutes of quiet without a phone in your hand does more for your hormones than people give it credit for. Give it a real month before you judge the results. The first 5 days tell you what's going on, but rebuilding a gland that's been running on empty for years takes a little longer than a work week. Even once you're finally feeding it the right way, if you've been running on empty and just assumed it was your age catching up with you, I want you to know that's very often not the truth. A lot of men get their real energy back once they stop starving the glands that were supposed to be producing it. So once you know which kind of tired you're actually dealing with, getting your real energy back is a lot simpler than it feels right now. It just takes feeding those glands the raw material they've been missing and giving your habits a chance to move closer to how our bodies were actually built to run, instead of another supplement promising to fix it overnight. That's exactly why we put together a complete protocol to reverse this naturally in 30 days or less. It walks you through the exact 5-day test and the routines we use to keep that energy once it's back. Scan the QNR code on the screen or click the link in the description. Go check it out while it's up. If this made sense to you, subscribe and leave me a comment telling me what day you noticed the shift. I want to hear it. See you on the next one.